Howdy, y'all. Joe Hills here, recording as I always do in Nashville, Tennessee, and welcome to Hermitcraft 10. We are going to be connecting to the server shortly. Normally, I would set up my streams with a little bit of music, but on Saturday nights, we like to go ahead and do a little bit of reading and make sure that that reading VOD stays live for people. If I include music in the streams, it creates a bunch of trouble with the YouTube, and I just don't want to deal with it. So, here's what we're going to do. I am going to say howdy, howdy, howdy. It's me down here where slot 9 should be. Woo! Welcome. We are going to set up the stream and jump in. I know that Cub had a stream earlier today. Some people were telling me about it. We're going to go ahead and we're going to address a little bit of that. That's not the focus. It's not the focus of the stream. This is a reading and getting things done stream. Saturday night. In fact, we have been reading for 1 year, every Saturday night, except for the few that I was traveling or had to miss. We've been reading Moby Dick out loud while doing grindy stuff on Hermitcraft. Almost every Saturday for a year. So, we are actually on chapter 135 of Moby Dick. The final chapter. There's an epilogue after that, but we have been reading Moby Dick for a year, and we have made it almost all the way through. So that's pretty cool. We're going to go ahead and pin the What We're Reading link in both chats. So if anybody wants to follow along at home, they can. Let's go ahead and post that. What we're reading. Bum, bum. Pinned in the Twitch chat. Yeah. Here's what we're going to be reading in the YouTube chat. Same book. Same book. Moby Dick. Welcome, Miss Goldfox. Welcome, Bob the Great. Welcome, Jeremy. And David Kendall 8 Webs. Frog in a Hat, Iconic Anemone. Hey Ace, Furious, Segment We See. Welcome Life Watcher. Rap K Cosplay, Arya. Welcome Amberwood Diva, Marshmallow Monster, Life Watcher, Mini Zoekins, and K Arts. Glad to see y'all. Okay, so I have not connected to the server yet because just in case the permit office trapped where I logged out, I don't think they know where I logged out, but they might have. I want to make sure that we're recording when we connect to the server. So I'm switching to recording mode. Just before we jump in, when there's like overlays and you see my camera, I'm talking to the chat. When I turn off all the overlays, I'm kind of in recording mode, and I'm not necessarily going to be reading the chat out loud and saying stuff and acknowledging tips when I'm in recording mode. I haven't posted the tipping link yet. Just as a reminder, tips are welcome via paypal.me/showhills and YouTube Super Chat. So we're going to kind of get in the habit of recording every time we connect to the server for a little while because things are heating up. I want to make sure that I don't just... Normally, when we're not in the middle of a Deadly Demise style storyline or Exile storyline, I go ahead and I connect to the server and I log in and I make sure all my stuff is good and then I start the stream. We're doing the opposite now. So, in theory, I think I logged off somewhere they wouldn't expect me to log off. Let's find out. Time to log in and find out if I'm dead. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Woo! Okay, well, someone has definitely been here because I logged out next to a bed, and that bed is gone. But I don't think they knew where I logged out. Okay, so we do need to go set my spawn somewhere else. So let's go ahead and get on that real quick. I think... Oh, boy. I turned down block sounds because that box, or that machine of Asuma's in the end was so loud. It was just ticking. Tick, 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 tick. It was maddening. So yeah, I turned those down. Okay, cool. So now you guys should be able to hear the game again. Cool. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to go and we're going to pick up some wool. Because I heard that Asuma had destroyed all my beds. Or taken them or something. I don't know. It seems like every time something bad happens on the server, it's Asuma's fault. But, you know, I don't know. It's fine. We can use Asuma's own farm to get new wool to replace those beds. think it was somewhere around here, wasn't it? I'm gone too far. Also, if anybody's worried about the weather here in Nashville, yeah, we had a big storm roll through, and there's still another wave coming. This next wave shouldn't be dangerous, but just in case it knocks out the power, you know, hopefully it won't interrupt the stream too much. Okay. But, yeah, Okay. So, yeah, I need to stay in recording mode. Let's swing past here. Howdy, y'all. Joe Hills here, recording as I always do in Nashville, Tennessee, and I am enjoying Hermitcraft Season 10. I hope you are too. I just logged in and discovered that my bed was gone. And I've heard rumors that the permit office has been taking beds from all over the server. So I just swung back by the wool farm to grab some green wool or lime wool. You know, one of them colorful wools. Because here's what I'm thinking. If they took all of my villager beds, I need to go make a bunch more. It's going to be a whole mess over there. So let's go be on our way. Past our inventory management is my passion sign, which unfortunately doubles as a comeback with a warrant sign. Oh well. You know, sometimes I'm my own greatest enemy. That's fine. We're gonna do a slow glide in here, but we're gonna speed this up maybe in post-production to make it look good. Okay, I can't alt-tab out. I realize one of the chats is wrong. Even though I'm talking to the chat right now, we're still in the middle of the recording. We're just making sure that I stay on course. We're going to gently curve the camera here. Because when you speed up a camera turn, it looks really fast. We are nearing our village. We are nearing our villages here. Let's go ahead and swoop down and see what we need to expect. Yep, that is a lot of missing beds. Ooh. We're going to have to deal with that. Did X notice the beds over here too? They were indeed noticed. Dang it. Okay. Well, I'm going to go grab some logs and get this all cleaned up. Time skip. So, another marker there. Stop recording. Here's what I'm thinking, is because this Moby Dick recording is going to be super long, we're going to actually disconnect and reconnect to the server for replay mod purposes. Let's put this grass away for right now. And, yeah, so we can ditch these. Cool. No, not those. Those go over here. I'm seeing a lot of people in chat arguing about how many Asumas it was. Some are saying it was 0 Asumas, and it was actually Cub and Score. Some are saying it was 12 Asumas. Who can know? Who can know? Alrighty, so we're going to go ahead and disconnect and reconnect for replay mod purposes. Did I not record that? Hold on. Did that recording not work? Something might have gone wrong. What? Hold on. That's not good. Storm. Oh, dang it. Okay. Okay, no. We got the recording. Cool. Okay, so. Alrighty. So, for those of you who are not normally here on a Saturday night, we are going to be reading Moby Dick while we do grindy stuff in Minecraft. In this case, apparently, we're going to be placing a bunch of beds. Just as a reminder, tips are welcome via paypal.me/JoeHills and YouTube Super Chat. Also, another thing... Okay, yeah, I need to switch my chat over in the Discord. To people who are part of the Patreon Discord, thank you for joining me tonight. As always, your support is always appreciated. If anybody else would like to join the Discord, invites are $5 a month for Discord access, $10 a month for Minecraft servers through my Patreon. And I do send those invites out manually. So if you sign up today, I'll get you your invite within the next business day. Let's see. In the Discord chat, MJ says, "Evening, Joe." Centauratron says, "Moby Dick finale." Champagne Jane says, "Looking forward to this. I resisted reading the last chapter after last week's stream." MJ says it's basically Demise all over again. And Centauratron says it's Armageddon out there. A lot of people are saying blame 12 Asumas. Yep, that's what I thought. I thought it was 12 Asumas. That's the rumor I heard. I heard the rumor it was 12 Asumas. So. Okay, what else? So another thing I heard today. Oh, wait. Before we get into that. Anybody in the Discord chat, have you guys checked the work in progress tab in the Discord? Because we had a lot of problems here with electricity today. Even though the power didn't go out, there were some flickers and there was a lot of really close lightning all over the city. That's not like, oh no, I'm revealing my location by saying lightning struck near me a few times, because the entire city got hit by lightning like hundreds of times over the course of the last 12 hours. So we had the internet turned off and we had unplugged everything. So I just had my laptop and I came up with this idea for a rap that's kind of like... Have you guys seen the Mummy Money rap from Teen Titans Go? I haven't seen a lot of Teen Titans Go. My kid was really into it for a while, so I saw some of it when she was watching it. And, but yeah, they would have this thing that was kind of like Scrubs, where they would occasionally just do some sort of cutaway to... But, like, instead of it being, like, a cutaway to, like, a really weird imagined thing, it's a really weird imagined thing that's, like, a music bit or a rap or something. You know what I mean? And, so, like, I was thinking about that Mummy Money rap. And I had this funny idea for, like, excuses that Beef and I could use to investigate the other hermits' bases and stuff. And so I was like, I came up with a fake federal agency and an entire rap. And I don't think it's actually going to fit with the story, because I think I'm going to use it as like a joke thing. If I can find a place to fit it into an episode, I think I'm going to suggest this to one of the other Nopo hermits. And they're going to say, wait, so Joe, your whole plan is to show up at people's bases and ask to come in without a warrant. Didn't you spend, like, a whole bunch of time teaching everybody not to let anybody in without a warrant? It's like, ah! So I put the first 8 seconds of that animation in the work in progress thing on my Discord before we started. So if you have 8.5 seconds and want to check that out real quick for the Discord crew, feel free. Quill says that's incredible, CBH, and maybe a touch loud. Yeah, I haven't done, that is obviously, that's a rough animation without, that's not the final audio or the final animation. That's just like, it's amazing though that you can spend an entire day on 8 seconds of unfinished animation. Will there be face cam for the stream? Yeah, I'm down here in slot 9, Bengineer. Okay. Yep, I'm down here in slot 9, putting the hot in the hot bar. Hey, our first tip of the stream just rolled in from Wandering Mask, who says, I'm a bit under the weather, but had to make sure I was here for the final chapter. Thank you for reading. Stay safe in-game and out. Well, thank you for kicking us off, starting strong, Wandering Mask. Also, I gotta say, I was super impressed with your line art sketches that you sent Jev. He showed those on stream the other day when I was lurking, and I was like, I knew Wandering Mask did art and comics, but I had never actually had a chance to see any of your work. Or maybe I've seen it, but like I didn't realize it was yours or whatever. But yeah, when Jevin shouted you out and showed that, that was really cool stuff. So yeah, he's sounds super happy with it. Everything I've heard about it on and off screen, very positive. So yeah, congrats on the cool gig. And yeah, thank you for supporting the arts and my work in particular as well. So let's see, where were we? Rap says, the fact that you'll have to keep replacing all the villagers' beds, at this point, should be a rule to not have your respawn out of... No, I don't want a rule like that. I want them to have to worry every time that one of these is my bed. Also, I might accidentally click one of these beds, and I don't want to get yelled at. And I might intentionally click one of these beds. There's a lot of ways that these beds could end up clicked, and I don't want to get yelled at. I'd rather have fewer rules and place more beds. Okay, that's how I look at it. Okay. That was not how to do that. Okay. But yeah, we had so many beds over here because there were so many villagers. But, okay. So, while we do this, I should probably go ahead and, the next thing I was going to talk about was I heard that Cub, not Asuma this time, but Cub fan, 135 himself, opened his stream by asking everyone to read something along with him. And in this case, it was a loyalty pledge to the permit office. And I don't entirely think that that's that's not how I would do it, you know? In fact, I am going to ask everyone to click the What We're Reading link pinned to the top of the chat that links to Moby Dick and join me in reading chapter 135, The Chase, third day. Repeat after me. The morning of the third day dawned fair and fresh, and once more the solitary nightman at the foremast was relieved by crowds of the daylight lookouts, who dotted every mast and almost every spar. I'm just kidding, you don't have to repeat that. You don't have to repeat that. Do you see him? Cried Ahab. But the whale was not yet in sight. In his infallible wake, though, but follow that wake, that's all. Helm there, steady as thou goest and hast been going. What a lovely day again. Were it a new-made world and made for a summer house to the angels, and this morning the first of its throwing open to them, a fairer day could not dawn upon that world. Here's food for thought. Had Ahab time to think? But Ahab never thinks. He only feels. Feels. That's tingling enough for mortal man to think's audacity. God only has that right and privilege. Thinking is, or ought to be, a coolness and a calmness, and our poor hearts throb, and our poor brains beat too much for that. And yet, I've sometimes thought my brain was very calm. Frozen calm. This old skull cracks so. Like a glass in which the contents turn to ice and shiver it. And still this hair is growing now, this moment growing, and heat must breed it. But no, it's like that sort of common grass that will grow anywhere, between the earthy clefts of Greenland, ice, or in Vesuvius lava. How the wild winds blow it. They whip it about me as the torn shreds of split sails lash the tossed ship they cling to. A vile wind that has no doubt blown air this through prison corridors and cells and wards of hospitals and ventilated them, and now comes blowing thither as innocent as fleeces. Out upon it, it's tainted. Were I the wind, I'd blow no more on such a wicked, miserable world. I'd crawl somewhere to a cave and slink there. And yet, 'tis a noble and heroic thing, the wind. Who ever conquered it? In every fight, it has the last and bitterest blow. Run tilting at it, and you but run through it. A coward wind that strikes stark and naked men, but will not stand to receive a single blow. Even Ahab is a braver thing, a nobler thing than that. Would now the wind but had a body. But all the things that most exasperate and outrage mortal men, all these things are bodiless. But only bodiless as objects, not as agents. There's a most special, a most cunning, most malicious difference. And yet, I say again and swear it now, that there's something all glorious and gracious in the wind. These warm trade winds, at least, that in the clear heavens blow straight on, in strong and steadfast vigorous mildness, and veer not from the mark, however the baser currents of the sea may turn and tack. And the mightiest Mississippis of the land swift and swerve about. uncertain where to go at last. And by the eternal poles, these same trades that so directly blow my good ship on, these trades, or something like them, something so unchangeable and full as strong, blow my keeled soul along. To it, aloft there, what do you say?
Nothing, sir.
Nothing, and noon at hand. The doubloon goes a-begging. See the sun? It must be so. I oversailed him. How got the start? He's chasing me now, not I him. That's bad. I might have known it too. Fool, the lines, the harpoons he's towing. I've run it by him last night. About. Come down, all ye but the regular lookouts, man the braces. Steering as she had done, the wind had been somewhat on the Pequod's quarter, so that now, being pointed in the reverse direction, the braced ship sailed hard upon the breeze as she rechurned the cream in her own white wake. Against the wind, he now steers for the open jaw, murmured Starbuck to himself as he coiled the new-hauled main brace upon the rail. God keep us, but already my bones feel damp within me, and from inside wet my flesh. I misdoubt me that I disobey God in obeying him. Stand by to sway me up, cried Ahab, advancing to the hempen basket. We shall meet him soon. Aye, sir. And straightway Starbuck did Ahab's bidding, and once more Ahab swung on high. A whole hour now passed. Gold beaten out to ages. Time itself now held long breaths. To keen suspense. But at last, some 3 points off the weather bow, Ahab descried the spout again, and instantly, from the 3 mastheads, 3 shrieks went up, as if tongues of fire had voiced it. Forehead to forehead I meet thee this 3rd time, Moby Dick. On deck there, brace shaper up, crowd her to the wind's eye. He's too far off to lower yet, Mr. Starbuck. These sails shake. Stand o'er that helmsman with a topmaul. So. He travels fast, and I must down. But let me have one more good look round a luck. But let me have one more good round look aloft here at the sea. There's time for that. An old sight, and yet somehow so young. Aye, and not changed a wink since I first saw it. A boy from the sand hills of Nantucket, the same to Noah as to me. There's a soft shower to leeward. Such lovely leewardings. They must lead somewhere, to something else than common land, more palmy than palms. Leeward! The white whale goes that way. Look to windward, then. the better, if the bitterer quarter. But goodbye. Goodbye, old masthead. What's this green? Ah, tiny mosses in these warped cracks. No such green weather stains on Ahab's head. There's the difference now between man's old age and matters. But I, old mast, we both grow old together. Sound in our holes, though, are we not, my ship? I, minus a leg, that's all. By heaven, this dead wood has the better of my live flesh every way. I can't compare with it. And I've known some ships made of dead trees outlast the lives of men made out of the most vital stuff of vital fathers. What's that he said? He should go still before me, my pilot, and yet to be seen again. But where? Will I have eyes at the bottom of the sea? Supposing I descend those endless stairs, and all night I've been sailing from him? Wherever he did sink to, I, like many more, thou toldst direful truth, as touching thyself, O Parsi. But Ahab, there thy shot fell short. Goodbye, masthead. Keep a good eye on the whale, the while I'm gone. We'll talk tomorrow, nay, tonight, when the white whale lies down there, tied by head and tail. He gave the word, and, still gazing round him, was steadily lowered through the cloven blue air to the deck. In due time, the boats were lowered. But, as standing in his shallop's stern, Ahab just hovered upon the point of descent, he waved to the mate, who held one of the tackle ropes on deck, and bade him pause. "Starbuck!" "Sir?" "For the third time, my soul's ship starts upon this voyage, Starbuck." "Aye, sir, thou wilt have it so." "Some ships sail from their ports, and ere afterwards are missing, Starbuck." "Truth, sir, 'tis saddest truth." "Some men die at the ebb tide, some at low water, some at the full of the flood, and I feel now like a billow that's all one crested comb, Starbuck. I am old. Shake hands with me, man." Their hands met, their eyes fastened. Starbuck's tears, the glue. "Oh, my captain, noble heart, go not, go not. See, it's a brave man that weeps. How great the agony of the persuasion then." "Lower away!" cried Ahab, tossing the mate's arm from him. "Stand by the crew." In an instant, the boat was pulling round close under the stern. "The sharks! The sharks!" cried a voice from the low cabin window there. "Oh, master, come back!" But Ahab heard nothing, for his own voice was high lifted then, and the boat leaped on. Yet the voice spake true, for scarce had he pushed from the ship, when numbers of sharks, seemingly rising from out the dark waters beneath the hull, maliciously snapped at the blades of the oars every time they dipped in the water, And in this way, they accompanied the boat with their bites. It is a thing not uncommonly happening to whaleboats in those swarming seas. The sharks, at times, apparently following them in the same prescient way that vultures hover over the banners of marching regiments in the east. But these were the first sharks that had been observed by the Pequod. Since the white whale had been first descried, and whether it was that Ahab's crew were all such barbarians, and therefore their flesh was more musky to the senses of the sharks, a matter sometimes well known to affect them. However it was, they seemed to follow that one boat without molesting the others. Heart of ringed steel. Sorry. Heart of wrought steel, murmured Starbuck, gazing over the side and following with his eyes the receding boat. Canst thou yet ring boldly to that sight, lowering thy keel among ravening sharks, and followed by them, open-mouthed to the chase? And this is the critical third day. For when 3 days flow together in one continuous intense pursuit, be sure the first is the morning, the second the noon, the third the evening, and the end of that thing be that end, what it may. Oh, my God, what is this that shoots through me and leaves me so deadly calm, yet expectant, fixed at the top of a shutter? Future things swim before me, as in empty outlines and skeletons. All the past has somehow grown dim. Merry girl, thou fadest in pale glories behind me. Boy, I see to see, but thy eyes grown wondrous blue. Strangest problems of life seem clearing, but clouds sweep between. Is my journey's end coming? My legs feel faint, like his who has footed it all day. Feel thy heart. Beats it yet? Stir thyself, Starbuck. Stave it off. Move! Move! Speak aloud! Masthead there! See ye my boy's hand? On the hill. Crazed. Aloft there. Keep thy keenest eye upon the boat. Mark well the whale. Oh, again. Drive off that hawk. See, he pecks. He tears the vein. Pointing to the red flag flying at the main truck. Ha! He soars away with it. Where's the old man now? Seest that sight? Oh, Ahab. Shudder, shudder. The boats had not gone very far when a signal from the mastheads, a downward pointed arm. Ahab knew that the whale had sounded, but intending to be near him at the next rising, he held on his way, a little sideways from the vessel, the becharmed crew maintaining the profoundest silence as the head-beat waves hammered and hammered against the opposing bow. Drive! Drive in your nails, O ye waves! to their uttermost heads drive 'em in. Ye but strike a thing without a lid, and no coffin and no hearse can be mine. And hemp only can kill me, yeah. Suddenly, the waters around them slowly swelled in broad circles, then quickly upheaved, as if sideways sliding from a submerged berg of ice swiftly rising to the surface. A low rumbling sound was heard, a subterraneous hum, and then all held their breaths as, bedraggled with trailing ropes and harpoons and lances, a vast form shot lengthwise, but obliquely, from the sea. Shrouded in a thin, drooping veil of mist, it hovered for a moment in the rainbowed air, and then fell, swamping back into the deep. Crushed 30 feet upwards, the waters flashed for an instant like heaps of fountains, then brokenly sank in a shower of flakes, leaving the circling surface creamed like new milk round the marble trunk of the whale. "Give way!" cried Ahab to the oarsmen, and the boats darted forward to the attack. But, maddened by yesterday's fresh irons that corroded in him, Moby Dick seemed combinedly possessed by all the angels that fell from heaven. The wide tiers of welded tendons overspreading his broad white forehead. Beneath the transparent skin looked knitted together as head on he came churning his tail among the boats and once more flailed them apart, spilling out the irons and lances from the two mates' boats and dashing in one side of the upper part of their bows, but leaving Ahab's almost without a scar. While Daggoo and Queequeg were stopping the strained planks, and the whales swimming out from them turned and showed one entire flank as he shot by them again, at that moment a quick cry went up, lashed round and round to the fish's back, pinioned in the turns upon turns in which, during the past night, the whale had reeled the involutions of the lines around him. The half-torn body of the Parsee was seen, his sable raiment frayed to shreds, his distended eyes turned full upon old Ahab. The harpoon dropped from his hand. Befooled, drawing in a long, lean breath. Parsee, I see thee again, and thou goest before, and then this. This is the hearse that thou didst promise. But I hold thee to the letter of thy word. Where's the second hearse? Way, mates, to the ship. Those boats are useless now. Repair them if you can in time and return to me. If not, Ahab is enough to die. Down, men. First thing that but offers to jump from this boat I stand in, that thing I harpoon. Ye are not other men, but my arms and legs, so obey me. Where's the whale? Gone down again? But he looked too nigh the boat, for as if bent on escaping with the corpse he bore, and as if the particular place of the last encounter had been but a stage in his leeward voyage, Moby Dick was now again steadily swimming forward, and had almost passed the ship, which thus far had been sailing in the contrary direction to him, though for the present her headway had been stopped. He seemed swimming with his utmost velocity, and now only intent upon pursuing his own straight path in the sea.
Oh! Ahab! cried Starbuck. Not too late it is, even now. The third day to desist. See, Moby Dick seeks thee not. It is thou that madly seekest him.
Setting sail to the rising wind, the lonely boat was swiftly impelled to leeward by both oars and canvas. And at last, when Ahab was sliding by the vessel, so nearly as plainly to distinguish Starbuck's face as he leaned over the rail, he hailed him to turn the vessel about and follow him, not too swiftly, at a judicious interval. Glancing upwards, he saw Tashtego, Queequeg, and Daggoo eagerly mounting to the three mastheads, while the oarsmen were rocking in the two staved boats, which had but just been hoisted to the side, and were busily at work repairing them. One after the other, through the portholes as he sped, he also caught flying glimpses of Stubb and Flask, busying themselves on deck among bundles of new irons and lances. As he saw all this, he heard the hammers in the broken boats. Far other hammers seemed driving a nail into his heart. But he rallied, and now, marking that the vane or flag was gone from the main masthead, he shouted to Tashtego, who had just gained that perch, to descend again for another flag, and a hammer and nails, and so nail it to the mast. So let's go ahead and take a quick break there. We had a lot of folks coming in. I normally try not to stop in the middle of the chapter unless that chapter is particularly long, and this one is. So yeah, let's just take a quick break. I need to take a sip of my drink. Any thoughts or questions so far on this chapter? Champagne Jane says, I am amazed by their ability to track this whale. Well, they did overshoot it before catching back up to it, but yeah, they had the right idea in general. Hey, we got a tip rolling in. Let's see who it's from. It's from Gritmonger, tipping for the legendary Invisible expansion. Well, thank you very much, Gritmonger. We were 15 away from our first face camera expansion milestone, and now we got 5 past thanks to you. Please direct your attention to slot 9, where I'm putting the hot in the hot bar. So I can say howdy, y'all. Crow Hills here, expanding as I always do in Nashville, Tennessee. D to D to D, D to D to D, D D. Woo! It has been a long day. A lot of crazy weather here in Nashville. But I got some decent animation, kind of silly stuff figured out. Not sure if it'll be in the next episode. Probably one of the ones after that. I do need to record an outro. Or something. For the next episode at some point later on in the stream. Maddie says this book is so dramatic and I love it. Hey, I'm glad you're having a good time there, Maddie. I'm really enjoying this too. Thank you all for hanging out and giving me an opportunity to revisit this book. It's been a long time since I read it, and I feel like I get a lot more out of books when I read them out loud. Because I have to use different parts of my brain to figure out, you know, the tone. There's a lot of characters here switching between yelling at the other crew around them and talking to themselves as well. So, like, it's kind of clearer to me what's going on when I'm forced to vocalize it. But yeah, I'm having a good time. Okay. If anybody else would like to tip, once again, we are only 15 away from the next face camera expansion milestone. Tips are welcome via paypal.me/JoeHills. And YouTube Super Chat. Okay. West Birchfield says, do you have this memorized? No. I thought I pinned the what we're reading link to the top of the YouTube chat, but apparently I didn't. So now, yeah, you guys can find it. We are in chapter 135. Okay. Yeah, memorizing 135 chapters of Moby Dick would be pretty impressive. I would like to be an impressive person, but I don't think I'm that particular impressive person. Joseph Perry says, first time catching a stream. Loving the dramatic reading. Well, thank you very much for stopping by. Just so you know, we've been reading Moby Dick for an entire year, and we are currently on the last chapter. So it's okay if you're like, boy, I wish they would do... I'm a little bit confused about where we are in the story. We're at the end. We are on the third day of the chase. This is the second full novel I've read on stream. We just spent the last year reading Moby Dick a few chapters at a time every Saturday. Last season on Hermitcraft, we read all of Dracula. And then we took a break for a while, reading some short stories and poems and other stuff before we started this novel. So we're not about to jump into another novel immediately next week, but we will have a stream next Saturday where I'll be reading some short stories. I've got some things in mind for that. Araya Thallium says, I can't believe it's been a year. I know, right? Time flies. Centauratron says, I, for one, would have gotten lost on who was speaking if it wasn't for your voices. Yeah, I will say that the author doesn't do a great job of marking who's shouting each line. So it's kind of, to some degree, up to the reader to pay extra attention. Radical Nacho says, where were you when my lit professor assigned Moby Dick? Nashville, Tennessee? I was gonna say, let's see, I'm like in my late 30s, and I moved to Nashville when I was 18. Yeah, I've lived here over half my life now. That's wild. MJ Alpaca says, now I'm remembering how the only Dracula stream I caught was the final Dracula stream. Glad to have made it to most of the Moby Dick ones. Yeah, well, that's the thing, is even if you're coming in on the tail end of this tail end, because of a whale having a tail, even if you're coming in on the tail end of this reading, there's definitely going to be more. I've got lots to do here on Hermitcraft. Last time when we finished Dracula, I think we were close to the end of the season, so it didn't make sense to pick a new book until season 10 started. But we've got plenty of time left in this season, so we're definitely going to start a new book sooner than that. Jensen S.O. says,
Moby Dick seeks thee not. It is thou that madly seekest him.
Hits pretty hard, not going to lie. Smelly Fish says, Homer's Iliad in the future. I really like the Iliad, and I like reading it aloud, but the problem is the translation that I want to read isn't in the public domain, and I would end up just being really annoyed. I don't like the public domain translations of the Iliad. And, so I'm probably, so yeah, the Iliad and the Odyssey, my favorite translations are the W.H.D. Rouse ones. But, yeah, since those aren't going to be in the public domain for a while, we might have to wait a few decades. You could say this book has been a splash. Yeah, you could say that. You could say that very often, and it'd be funny, because it's a splash. Okay, so I think we are ready to continue. Just as a reminder, viewer support is what makes these streams possible. Tips are welcome via paypal.me/JoeHills and YouTube Super Chat. Lord Thunderpork says, I assumed there was one translation. What are the differences? Anything that old in a very popular language that's a very popular story is going to have lots of translations. The differences are the words they chose to tell the story. Yeah. Like, languages don't translate one-to-one. There's not a, oh, well, this is the only logical translation of this. Especially when a story is originally written as a poem, where you can't maintain all of the poetic elements while translating from Greek to English, so you have to pick which ones to prioritize at each point. I'm treating this like this was a serious question, and I'm trying to answer it, but I'm also... Like, that's also... I feel like I'm being trolled with that question. I don't know. I'm trying to give you the benefit of the doubt. Hey, Lost Cult Music, thank you for tipping 3. And that gets us now 12 away from the next Face Gamer expansion milestone. Okay. Lord Thunderpork says, that was helpful, makes sense. Thanks, Joe. Okay, well, I'm glad you weren't trolling me. Atlanticurs says, this is why, as much as I appreciate translated poetry, I feel it misses the spirit of the original, because poetry is so inherent to its native language. Yeah, it's really hard to read translated poetry. And so, yeah. Vardius V says, I don't know a lot of translations, but I will never forget my professor getting up and performing Rage Goddess. Sing the Rage. Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways to open the Iliad by Homer. WHD Rouch's approach. WHD Rouse's approach is an angry man. There is my story. I like that. Stylistically, it feels easier for me to read W.H.D. Rouse than a lot of the other translations allowed. There's nuances that get lost. Yeah, exactly. You're going to lose nuances no matter how you translate something. And that's the challenge of the translator, is to determine which nuances are most important to maintain. John says, yo, man, I saw your video with Cleo and it blew my mind. Hey, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Okay, so we're going to go ahead. Let's take down the setting up stream now sign and resume. Whether flagged by the 3 days running chase and the resistance to his swimming in the knotted hamper he bore, or whether it was some latent deceitfulness and malice in him, whichever was true, the white whale's way now began to abate, as it seemed, from the boat so rapidly nearing him once more, though indeed the whale's last start had not been so long a one as before. And still, as Ahab glided over the waves, the unpitying sharks accompanied him, and so pertinaciously stuck to the boat, and so continually bit at the plying oars, that the blades became jagged and crunched, and left small splinters in the sea at almost every dip. Heed them not, those teeth, but give new rowlocks to your oars. Pull on, 'tis the better rest, the shark's jaw than the yielding water.
But at every bite, sir, the thin blades grow smaller and smaller.
They will last long enough. Pull on, pull on. But who can tell, he muttered, whether these sharks swim to feast on Moby Dick or on Ahab. But pull on. Aye, all alive now. We near him. The helm! Take the helm. Let me pass. And so, saying two of the oarsmen helped him forward to the bows of the still flying boat. At length, as the craft was cast to one side and ran ranging along with the white whale's flank, he seemed strangely oblivious of its advance, as the whale sometimes will, and Ahab was fairly within the smoky mountain mist, which, thrown off from the whale's spout, curled round his great Madadnuk hump. He was even thus close to him when, with body arched back and both arms lengthwise high lifted to the poise, he darted his fierce iron and his far fiercer curse into the hated whale, as both steel and curse sank to the socket as if sucked into a morass. Moby Dick sideways writhed, spasmodically rolled his nigh flank against the bow, and without staving a hole in it, so suddenly canted the boat over that had it not been for the elevated part of the gunwale to which he then clung, Ahab would once more have been tossed into the sea. As it was, 3 of the oarsmen, who foreknew not the precise instant of the dart, and were therefore unprepared for its effects, these were flung out, but so fell that in an instant 2 of them clutched the gunwale again, and rising to its level on a combing wave, hurled themselves bodily inboard again, the 3rd man helplessly dropping astern, helplessly dropping astern, but still afloat and swimming. Almost simultaneously, with a mighty volition of ungraduated, instantaneous swiftness, the white whale darted through the weltering sea. But when Ahab cried out to the steersman to take new turns with the line and hold it so, and commanded the crew to turn round on their seats and tow the boat up to the mark, the moment the treacherous line felt that double strain and tug, it snapped in the empty air. What breaks in me? Some sinew cracks, 'tis whole again. Oars, oars, burst in upon him. Hearing the tremendous rush of the sea-crashing boat, the whale wheeled round to present his blank forehead at bay. But in that evolution, catching sight of the nearing black hull of the ship, seemingly seeing in it the source of all his persecutions, bethinking it may be a larger and nobler foe, of a sudden he bore down upon its advancing prow, smiting his jaws amid fiery showers of foam. Ahab staggered. His hand smote his forehead. I grow blind! Hands, stretch out before me that I may yet grope my way. Is it night?
The whale! The ship!
Cried the cringing oarsman. Oars, oars, slope downwards to thy depths. Oh, see that ere it be forever too late, Ahab may slide this last time upon his mark. I see the ship, dash on, my men. Will ye not save my ship? But as the oarsmen violently forced their boat through the sledge-hammering seas, the before whale-smitten bow ends of 2 planks burst through, and in an instant almost, the temporarily disabled boat lay nearly level with the waves, its half-waiting, splashing crew trying hard to stop the gap and bail out the pouring water. Meantime, for one beholding instant, Tashtego's masthead hammer remained suspended in his hands, and the red flag, half wrapping him as with a plaid, then streamed itself straight out from him. as his own forward-flowing heart, while Starbuck and Stubb, standing upon the bowsprit beneath, caught sight of the down-coming monster just as soon as he.
The whale! The whale! Up helm! Up helm! Oh, all ye sweet powers of air, now hug me close. Let not Starbuck die, if die he must, in a woman's fainting fit. Up helm! I say, ye fools, the jaw! The jaw! Is this the end of all my bursting prayers? All my lifelong fidelities, O Ahab, Ahab, lo, thy work. Steady, helmsman, steady! Nay, nay, up helm again! He turns to meet us! Oh, his unappeasable brow drives me on towards one whose duty tells him he cannot depart. My God, stand by me now!
Stand, not by me, but under me. Whoever you are that will now help Stubb, for Stubb, too, sticks here. I grin at thee, thou grinning whale. Whoever helped Stubb or kept Stubb awake but Stubb's own unwinking eye. And now poor Stubb goes to bed upon a mattress that is all too soft. Would it were stuffed with brushwood. I grin at thee, thou grinning whale. Look, ye sun, moon, and stars. I call ye assassins of as good a fellow as ever spouted up his ghost. For all that, I would yet ring glasses with ye. Would ye but hand the cup, oh, thou grinning whale, but there'll be plenty of gulping soon. Why fly ye not, O Ahab, for me? Off shoes and jacket to it. Let Stubb die in his drawers, a most mouldy and o'er-salted death, though. Cherries, 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 ah! Flask, for one cherry ear we die. Cherries? I only wish we were where they grow. Oh, Stubb, I hope my poor mother's drawing my part pay ere this. If not, few coppers will now come to her, for the voyage is up. From the ship's bows, nearly all seamen now hung inactive. Hammers, bits of plank, lances, and harpoons, mechanically retained in their hands, just as they had darted from their various employments, all their enchanted eyes intent upon the whale, which, from side to side, strangely vibrating his predestinating head, sent a broad band of o'erspreading, semicircular foam before him as he rushed. Retribution, swift vengeance, eternal malice were in his whole aspect, and spite of all that mortal man can do, the solid white buttress of his forehead smote the ship's starboard bow till men and timbers reeled. Some fell flat upon their faces like dislodged trucks. The heads of the harpooneers aloft shook on their bull-like necks. Through the breach they heard the waters pour, as mountain torrents down a flume. "The ship! The hearse! The second hearse!" cried Ahab from his boat. "Its wood could only be American." Diving beneath the settling ship, the whale ran quivering along its keel, but, turning underwater, swiftly shot to the surface again, far off the other bow, but within a few yards of Ahab's boat, where, for a time, he lay quiescent.
I turn my body from the sun. What ho, Tashtego! Let me hear thy hammer, oh! Ye three unsurrendered spire.
Wait. Dang it, that's not a Tashtego line. I was reading with the Tashtego voice. Sorry. This book is hard to read. I turn my body from the sun. What ho, Tashtego! Let me hear thy hammer. O ye three unsurrendered spires of mine, thou uncracked keel and only God-bullied hull, thou firm deck and haughty helm and pole-pointed prow, death-glorious ship, must ye then perish, and without me am I cut off from the last fond pride of meanest shipwrecked captains? Oh, lonely death on lonely life. Oh, now I feel my topmost greatness lies in my topmost grief. Oh, from all your furthest bounds pour ye now in, ye bold billows of my whole foregone life. And top this one piled comber of my death. Towards thee I roll, thou all-destroying but unconquering whale. To the last I grapple with thee. From hell's heart I stab at thee. For hate's sake I spit my last breath at thee. Sink all coffins and all hearses to one common pool. And since neither can be mine, then let me then tow to pieces, while still chasing thee, though tied to thee, thou damned whale. Thus I give up the spear. The harpoon was darted. The stricken whale flew forward. With igniting velocity, the line ran through the grooves, ran foul. Ahab stooped to clear it, and he did clear it, but the flying turn caught him round the neck, and voicelessly as Turkish mutes bowstring their victim, he was shot out of the boat. Ere the crew knew he was gone, next instant, the heavy eyespice in the rope's final end flew out of the stark empty tub, knocked down an oarsman, and smiting the sea, disappeared in its depths. For an instant, the tranced boat's crew stood still, then turned. The ship. Great God, where is the ship? Soon they, through dim, bewildering mediums, saw her sidelong fading phantom, as in the gaseous Fata Morgana, only the uppermost masts out of water, while fixed by infatuation, or fidelity, or fate, to their once lofty perches, the pagan harpooneers still maintained their sinking lookouts on the sea. And now, concentric circles seized the lone boat itself, and all its crew, and each floating oar, and every lance pole, and spinning, animate and inanimate, all round and round in one vortex, carried the smallest ship of the Pequod out of sight. But As the last whelmings intermixingly poured themselves over the sunken head of Tashtego at the mainmast, leaving a few inches of the erect spar yet visible, together with the long streaming yards of the flag, which calmly undulated with ironical coincidings over the destroying billows they almost touched. At that instant, a red arm and hammer hovered backwardly uplifted in the open air, in the act of nailing the flag faster and faster to the subsiding spar. A skyhawk that tauntingly had followed the main truck downwards from its natural home among the stars, pecking at the flag, and incommoding Tashtego there. This bird now chanced to intercept its broad fluttering wings between the hammer and the wood, and simultaneously feeling that ethereal thrill, the submerged savage beneath, in his death gasp, kept his hammer frozen there. And so, the bird of heaven, with archangelic shrieks, and his imperial beak thrust upward, and his whole captive form folded in the flag of Ahab, went down with his ship, which, like Satan, would not sink to hell till she had dragged a living part of heaven along with her, and helmeted herself with it. Now, small fowls flew screaming over the yet yawning gulf. A sullen white surf beat up against its steep sides. Then all collapsed, and the great shroud of the sea rolled on, as it rolled on 5,000 years ago. Epilogue. And I only am escaped alone to tell thee. Job. The drama's done. Why then here does anyone step forth? Because one did survive the wreck. It so chanced that after the Parsi's disappearance, I was he whom the fates ordained to take the place of Ahab's bowsman. When that bowsman assumed the vacant post, the same who, when on the last day of the three men were tossed from out of the rocking boat, was dropped astern. So, floating on the margin of the ensuing scene, and in full sight of it, when the half-spent suction of the sunk ship reached me, I was then but slowly drawn toward the closing vortex. When I reached it, it had subsided to a creamy pool. Round and round, then, and ever contracting toward the button-like black bubble at the axis of that slowly wheeling circle, like another Ixion did I revolve, till, gaining that vital center, the black bubble upward burst, and now, liberated by reason of its cunning spring, and, owing to its great buoyancy, rising with great force, the coffin life buoy shot lengthwise from the sea, fell over, and floated by my side. Buoyed up by that coffin, for almost one whole day and night, I floated on a soft and dirge-like mane. The unharming sharks, they glided by as if with padlocks on their mouths. The savage seahawks sailed with sheathed beaks. On the second day, a sail grew nearer, and picked me up at last. It was the devious cruising Rachel that, in her it was the devious cruising Rachel that, in her retracing search after her missing children, only found another orphan. And that concludes Moby Dick, or The Whale, by Herman Melville. Thank you for joining me for this. It has been a wonderful adventure. Seeing Ishmael's exploration of all things within and beyond his comprehension, peeks into the lives of the crew, and, of course, Ahab's monomaniac descent into madness. Although, I think he was really mad the whole time. He just didn't need to hide it as much as he got closer to his objective. Centauratron says, so Ishmael was the only person to survive that whaling trip. Yes. That is it. Real quick, if you've enjoyed this stream, tips are welcome via paypal.me/JoeHills and YouTube Super Chat. We have a very generous tip rolling in from Champagne Jane for $50. Thank you very much, Champagne Jane. We were 12 away from our next face camera expansion. So 12 gets you one expansion, 32 gets you another, and then, let's see, 42, 50 gets us 2 away from a third. So let's get both of those expansions headed your way now. Please direct your attention to the lower left, because I'm about to expand Joe, do-do-do-do. And numero dos, even larger Joes, la-da-da-da. Okay. So, yeah, I would love to hear what y'all have any thoughts, questions, concerns. Champagne Jane wrote, if I'm understanding, Moby Dick lived? That's my understanding. Yeah, I mean, he was in a lot of pain. He wasn't doing great. But, yeah, I get the impression he survived that. So, yeah, that's just something to be aware of, is whales can survive a lot of things, it looks like. Is that Isuma's copper farm over there? Maybe we've overshot Isuma's already. Lovely Bunny says, Hermitcraft looks beautiful from this height. Yeah. I figured while we wrapped up the book, I should probably focus on the reading rather than placing blocks. So I decided to just do a quick flyby and update some chunks that needed to be updated. I don't know if you noticed, but I didn't have Tango or Grian's latest additions to their areas in my chunk cache for Bobby Mod. So I wanted to do some flybys and get that going in case I needed those in the background of future shots. Kai Farem says, I didn't know Queequeg would die. I had dreams of Ishmael and Queequeg eventually having more whaling adventures together, going home together. Yep, sorry. That's Moby Dick for you. Keon's Bishop says, that was intense. Wandering Mass says, that ending is so concise, it takes my breath away. Melville really set me up to expect a long, meandering ending, but nope, it hits harder. I mean, we did have 3 days of the chase. So, I mean, or 3 chapters of the chase. But, you know, it's one of those things, though, where, like, so I don't know how meandering you considered that. Some people might have considered that kind of pretty meandering. And Simply Lost says, wait, no, Pip died. Yeah, sadly, only one survived. And they leave it to you, the viewer, to take in the implications of that on your own time, or you, the reader. Dueling Bison tips 3. We were 2 away from the next expansion milestone, but now we are 1 past. So here we go. It's time to expand Joe. Do 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 do. And Gwitting says, I like the juxtaposition between the usual long drawn out sentences for other parts of the book and the succinctness of the ending. Champagne Jin says, it was concise compared to the rest of the book. Yeah, yeah. The ending of the book is like, okay, now that you know everything there is to know about whales, because I told you and you totally paid attention and listened right, everybody dies. Kindleus asks, am I doing Dumas next? I have no announcement about the next novel at this time. I'm going to be doing a few weeks of short stories before we get into the next novel. I'm thinking that what I want to do is start the next novel after I get home from the charity event, because I'm gonna miss that Saturday. We're not gonna have. I'm not gonna have the option to stream at my normal time, because after the stream we're probably gonna have like a what do you call it? Dinner. We're probably gonna eat after the stream, and yeah, because we got 2 days of charity streams in the middle of April, so I would say expect the new novel choice to be to begin the first Saturday after I get back from the charity event. That's the plan. But yeah, the thing is, like, after we do a big like a full day of streaming like that, it's good for everybody to just sit and have a meal and talk about, like, okay, what worked, what didn't, what could we do better tomorrow? Because we want to do the best 2 days of streaming possible for you. And part of that is us taking a break at halftime. So I can't just be like, sorry guys, I got to go read a book. Alent Kariz says, anyone short stories specifically, or just a bunch of your favorite short stories? I have some in mind, but ooh, what is this? None of that's a mending gold sword. That's kind of amazing. I'm gonna leave that for other people to discover. That's kind of cool. I should probably go back and get food at some point. Where will I announce the next book? If I was going to do the next book starting the week after we got back from the charity thing, probably what I should do is I should make the next book announcement like a milestone announcement. Like, hey, if we hit this milestone, not only will we have blah, 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 but I'm also gonna, we try to have the milestones be things that the whole audience wants to see. The whole audience doesn't care about my next book, but I might say, like, oh, hey, if we hit this next milestone by the end of Saturday night, or if we hit this next milestone, then I'll reveal what book is going to be next or something. I got to think about it. Oh, I didn't even know this was out here. See, this is the benefits of flying around for Bobby mod purposes. Okay, so any other questions or thoughts about the closing to Moby Dick? It's been a long road getting from there to here. It's been a long road getting from there to here. It's been a long time, but my time is finally here. Ooh, that elytra's gonna break soon. Just Ellen is fine. I can't promise I'm going to remember that. Champagne Jane says, I don't think I would have read the book on my own, but I really enjoyed listening to it. I'm so glad you enjoyed it. Yeah, that's one of the things that I want to accomplish when I select a book, is I want it to be the sort of thing that people are like, oh, you know what? I don't know if I would have gotten through that, but you gave me a good reason to stick with it, right? Do we have any food over here? No, of course not. That's silly. Why would I have food in a place I go? And I left the nom nom box in the other place too. Whoop, whoop. Just using all of Cleo's diamonds. Definitely not doing Lord of the Rings next because it's not in the public domain. Whatever I read next is definitely going to be in the public domain. It's almost certainly going to be something that was originally written in English because I don't want to deal with translation issues. I really like what Beef has done over here, though. This is great. Centauritron says, it feels anticlimactic, but also perfectly fitting. The whole time, Moby Dick has been hyped up to be this nigh immortal whale. So we're rooting for Ahab and his crew to be the ones that finally fell the beast. Only the rumors of the whale are proven seemingly correct. I wonder, now that we're there, how many people didn't know how this ended? I'm not trying to shame anybody, but, like, I feel like Moby Dick is one of those things like Romeo and Juliet where, like, there's a general cultural consciousness or awareness of the ending. But I'm realizing now that maybe not everybody knew going in what happened. What novels have I done so far? The only full-length novels we've done are Dracula and Moby Dick. Dang it. Dang it. Now I'm in a pit. Joe Gote says, I just totally forgot the ending. No, that's fair. Lolly says, so you wouldn't necessarily read Les Mis? No. Probably, I don't know. I've had problems trying to read translated things in the past. Where there's usually a lot of times there's a good or better recent translation that makes reading the older public domain translation feel like inferior. Kai for M says, I don't think I knew the ending when we started, but I did know it was a tragedy, so I could take a wild guess about what happened to Ahab. Username Underavailable says, my favorite read that's thought-provoking is The Giver. Yeah, I read that when I was in middle school, but, like, it's not in the public domain, I don't think. Are H.P. Lovecraft stories in the public domain? They are, but I feel like they're kind of overdone. I feel like people are more, and also H.P. Lovecraft stories are not novels. Like, we're talking about picking a novel. But yeah, Lovecraft has a lot of problems with racism as well. And I mean, obviously every book from the public domain time period is going to have some issues with racism. Some of them are worse than others. Like, I was really thinking that Utopia might be a good read by Thomas More, because a lot of people talk about utopias and dystopias these days, but not everybody's read the actual novel Utopia. But I started reading it, and I was just like, I've got a few issues with this. I don't want to deal with talking about some of these issues during the reading, but I can't just read it and not talk about them. So, like, yeah, it was... Would the original Alice's Adventures in Wonderland be a novel, and is it in the public domain? It is, and it would. So that's definitely under consideration. Centauratron says, I'd personally like to see this Journey into the Center of the Earth next. Not sure if it was originally written in English, though. Wasn't that by Jules Verne? I thought his stuff was English initially. Araya Thallium says, call me basic, but I love Frankenstein. So... But once again, yeah, I don't have anything to announce today in terms of novel choices. Boom, 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 boom. Ember says, all I really knew about it was there's a whale? Yeah, I mean, there is a whale. You're not wrong. Nutmeg Soup says, definitely did not know how Moby Dick ended. All I knew it was about a whale, and Matilda reads it in the Danny DeVito version of the movie. Oh, yeah, I remember that. They just let children read this filth. I think was his response or something along those lines. Centauratron says, yeah, Jules Verne, but I thought he was a French novelist. Is he? If he is, then that was... I didn't know that. I mean, I don't know a lot about like a lot of things. English literature was not like my primary field of study by any means. So that means if something is actually French literature, I don't know it, because I didn't study French literature either. So wait, who am I thinking of? Am I thinking of... Oh, I was like, did Jules Verne wrote The Time Machine? That was in English. No, that was H.G. Wells. Okay. I think part of the problem was, and maybe this is just because I'm tired, I was conflating the two people, yeah. Iconic Anemone says, I thought Treasure Island might be a good suggestion, but I don't want to do that right on the heels of another seafaring novel. I will say, since we've only done 2 so far, I want to avoid drawing too small a triangle or too narrow, too isosceles a triangle between the first three books, right? Like, because a lot of people were like, okay, you read Dracula, now read Frankenstein. Frankenstein comes after Dracula. And I was like, if I do Dracula, if I spend a whole year reading Dracula. And now I spent a whole year reading Moby Dick, right? So, yeah, I don't want to do a whole year right away with a seafaring novel, or necessarily go straight back to a second monster story. I think Frankenstein and Treasure Island are both good ones to come back around to. If I keep doing this, which I think I would like to do for several more years, I could definitely see Frankenstein ending up in the queue, but I can't see it being adjacent to... I can't see it immediately following or even closely following Dracula. I know Frankenstein is more science fiction than horror, but part of me is like, at that point, I want to do something that's further into science fiction, you know? Madame Mayhem says H.G. Wells' Time Machine would be a good choice. Very science fiction. Yeah, I'm not ruling it out. Introvert Kid says Robinson Crusoe or The Mysterious Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde would be at the top of the list of my suggestions. Yeah, y'all, I've read Pride and Prejudice. Don't worry. But I'm not sure that I would want to read it on stream. Alon says, Pride and Prejudice is amazing, but if you're looking for a shorter Austen book, I 100% would recommend Northanger Abbey. It's Austen poking fun at the gothic romance genre. Yeah, that's the thing, too, is, like, stuff like that is, like, fun for people who know the genre, but it's not necessarily as accessible to other people, right? So, you know, that kind of broader accessibility is part of what I'm factoring in here. Should I do something about... no. I don't know. I don't think Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead is in the public domain. I think Tom Stoppard wrote that relatively recently, and also it was a play. Mind of Me recommends Jack London. Jack London is an interesting choice. I was actually thinking, some people were asking for hints about which short stories I was going to do. I was actually thinking of doing a little Star Trek themed short story night. Because there's a couple episodes where Data gets trapped in the past in San Francisco. Not during the Bell riots, but earlier. And he meets two famous authors, Mark Twain and Jack London. Drezo says, Joe, I just found your channel. What's your basis theme for season 10? Oh, I'll show you. Let me post the What We're Building link, since the What We're Reading link is no longer relevant. Since we just finished the book, I'll pin that now. Santanu says, my favorite science fiction author is Isaac Asimov. I think I would enjoy reading some Asimov, but it's definitely not in the public domain. At least not the novels that I want to read most. Some of his earliest short stories, I think, would still not necessarily be. Because we only just now got The Great Gatsby, right? And I think Asimov's earliest writings were in the 40s. So... DD Bird, I should really let you guys look up if things are in the public domain, because I don't know how old each of these authors are. Yeah, Sherlock Holmes I might do as one of the short story nights between now and the next novel. So I want to do the Star Trek night with short stories from Mark Twain and Jack London. Gatsby would be fun. I'm not 100% sure that it's the best choice right now. I feel like Gatsby is not timely in the ways I would look for. I feel like Gatsby is kind of like Frankenstein, where that's one of the ones that's like, it's a very strong contender. And I think when the time is right, it is one of the books I'll probably end up reading. But just like, for me, a lot of what I do is very instinctive. And my instincts for both Frankenstein and Gatsby say, not yet. Niall says, what about Poe short stories? I've read a lot of those in the past, and I'm not going to rule out reading them again, but I do want to do some different stuff for these next few short story weeks. Champagne Jane says, what about Anna Karenina? I started reading it at one point, and I enjoyed it, but I stopped. I'm not sure if I'm going to get... Yeah, so... I really am not happy with the current leadership in the former Soviet Union's Russia region right now. And I don't want to have to complain about that as part of the framing every time I start a Saturday night stream. If the Russian people overthrow Putin or convince him to resign, I would be happy to celebrate that change in power by spending a year reading one of the great Russian novels. But once again, though, we run into translation problems. So that has two strikes against it, basically. The translation problems and the... we haven't seen the change in leadership. So, I'm not ruling it out. NK Art says there are a lot of Spanish magical realism stories that are fantastic. I actually read a lot of those in my Spanish classes when I was taking Spanish. And my problem with reading those is I like the originals a lot, and I understand Spanish. So I wouldn't want to... in some ways, it feels worse to read a translated work from a language that I can read. Right? Like, I would almost rather, at that point, we did, Realismo Mágico Night or something. And I just did the readings in Spanish. But I'm also not sure which of those are in the public domain. That's a whole thing I'd have to look into. I tried reading Don Quixote, NK Arts, for... I considered using that as one of my novels at one point. But what I didn't realize... If you guys haven't read Don Quixote, one of the things that people don't mention about it, when they talk about its importance and its place in literature and stuff, Don Quixote was written by someone who was attempting to be the Sam Raimi of his era. All of the fighting scenes in Don Quixote are ludicrously extra violent, described in extreme detail. And you know that scene in Monty Python where they keep cutting off the knight's limbs and he's spraying fountains of blood? Cervantes basically was writing sword fight scenes that are intentionally comedically descriptively gory, like super over the top stuff. But I tried to read some of that out loud as a test reading one time, and I was like, this is too violent. I'm I'm a little worried that it's going to make people uncomfortable for reasons that aren't the artistic goal of the stream. You know what I mean? Ellen says either my translation was more abridged than I realized or I just blocked it out of my memory. I don't know. I was reading the unabridged version. But, like, I could imagine that if you were going to abridge Don Quixote, that would be the sort of stuff where you're like, oh man, I could cut down so many pages just describing these fights. Book Fanatic says Oscar Wilde, ? Oscar Wilde is on my consideration list. Ian Mitchell says The Wonderful Wizard of Oz is always an option. That book and its 19 sequels are in the public domain and should be used more. I feel... Here's my problem with The Wizard of Oz. I feel like if they wanted me to promote The Wizard of Oz right now in the interstitial space between Wicked Part 1 and Wicked Part 2 in theaters, they should be paying me. Like, I want to go out, I want to encourage people to read books they wouldn't read otherwise. And there is a ludicrous marketing budget being applied right now to get people Ozmania fever or whatever. And I didn't get a cent of that. So I may call it resentment or spite, but like, I'm not going to work for them for free to help sell tickets to Wicked Part 2. So, folks here, a lot of people are like, ooh, Oscar Wilde, ooh. What Oscar Wilde's works do y'all think would be particularly enjoyable to hear out loud? Because that's part of this. Is it's not just like, ooh, which one's your favorite, but which one do you think would have, like, the best dialogue for character work and stuff like that, right? Hey, Mr. Hardluck, thank you. I'm glad that you enjoyed our little magic trick. That was a lot of fun. There's some people that you have to wake up pretty early in the morning to fool, but I'm willing to set that alarm. Importance of being earnest is a play, yeah. Prism is recommending Picture Dorian Gray. Pogo Stump also recommended Dorian Gray. Santanu says Metamorphosis by Kafka. Kafka is under consideration. I don't know. I kind of think The Trial is the more timely work than Metamorphosis. Ariah Salium says Picture Dorian Gray is my personal pick. Lolly says seconding Dorian Gray. NB the Musical, I don't give permission for things. If you're doing something that's fair use, you don't need my permission. I don't comment on fan projects. That's not meant to encourage or discourage you. You just kind of need to live your own life on how you want to make your art. And I feel like I do more harm than good by answering questions like that across the board, so I just try to avoid them entirely. Friendly Little Plant says the trial is a fun one. I feel like the trial is unfortunately more relevant now than it might be in a year. Or maybe that's good if it's going to be less relevant in the future, but I feel like the trial is a particularly relevant work at this point in time. And that it would be a good time. There's a few topics that I don't know if there's a good book about, but if there is a good book, I might want to read it. Does anybody know if there's a good book about the U.S. acquisition of the Virgin Islands? There's 3 U.S. Virgin Islands that we bought from Denmark. I learned about this on FX's show Archer. And then I was like, wait, is that real? But Archer does a really good job of referencing real events. And it turned out it was real. So if there are any good contemporary stories about that, that I think is very timely. Tarzan's in the public domain. Yeah, I've never actually read Tarzan. So that's one of the other things, is I'm trying to pick books that I've read at least once, because I don't want to be surprised by them the way I was surprised by Don Quixote. Are we talking about nonfiction or dramatized historical fiction? Honestly, if there's a first-person account that's like a memoir, I would not... I think if we're talking about jumping around a little bit, right? Trying to make sure that this doesn't feel like it's gotten too tight on itself. Like, because like I said, if you make a triangle of like Moby Dick, Dracula, and Treasure Island. Treasure Island is like right next to Moby Dick or whatever, or Frankenstein's right next to Dracula. But like if we picked somebody's memoir, but like also, you know, it's one of those things like, hey, this is technically nonfiction, but this is a story told by the person who lived through it, and we can't trust them on all the details. They're explicitly not a reliable narrator, right? I feel like I feel like a play is too far from a novel to try to read on one in like these streams, because like reading a play out loud is weird. You gotta say the names of the characters. It's a different structure entirely. But a memoir often contains letters from other people in the person's life and things like that. That's actually kind of similar to Dracula's scrapbook style, right? Isaiah Williamson says about Tarzan that E.R. Burroughs is all about the inborn superiority of the white aristocrat. Would not recommend it for the stream. Yeah, that's definitely a concern. I have already read The Giver, but I don't believe it's in the public domain. NK Art says The Giver will not be in the public domain until Lois Lowry's death, until 70 years after Lois Lowry's death, which has not happened yet. Yeah, so The Giver is not going to be in the public domain for a while. Queen Dark Lady says, has anyone suggested Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde yet? I consider Jekyll and Hyde to be kind of similar to Dracula and Frankenstein, which is not bad in and of itself. I like books like Dracula and Frankenstein. I've read Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I think it's worth being on the list. But for folks who are just coming in, one of the things that I'm trying to do is make sure that we don't get into too narrow a focus with these readings. And I feel like doing 2 monster stories in close sequence or 2 seafaring tales in close sequence will kind of like give people it won't just, I'm not just worried about what other people think, because that's not a good way to do it, but I feel like the goal of this is to kind of expand my experience and talent. And if I get too focused on one thing, I'm not forcing myself into, I want to create new comfort zones for myself. And like, I feel like after reading Dracula, Frankenstein is so similar that I don't want to come back around to that until I've done a few other things first, right? Like, I want to iterate on my experience reading monster stories, but I want to try some other things first. Although, you know, and arguably Moby Dick is also a monster story, but it's more of a kaiju story. Jekyll and Hyde says it's not so much of a monster story as a detective story. Yeah, that's fair. The cat says Fahrenheit 451. I don't think Ray Bradbury is in the public domain yet. Great Expectations. Dickens is another one where I like, in theory, I like the idea of reading a book by Charles Dickens. In fact, I like it so much, I already do it every year and have for half a decade. So, since, once again, we're only doing this once per week, and it takes us about a year to get through an entire novel, I feel like I'm trying to push my horizons outward, and I want to come back eventually and do something else by Charles Dickens. But the fact that we've been doing A Christmas Carol for so long makes me feel like that's not ambitious enough, right? A few people have suggested Animal Farm. Is George Orwell's work in the public domain yet? Like 1984 and Animal Farm? I don't actually know if those are in the public domain. Yeah, because, yeah, Fahrenheit 451 is not going to be in the public domain until 2049. Evening, Jiv. George Orwell is in the public domain in the UK, but not in the US. Wait, what? He died 75 years ago. Come Along says, wait, is that where the chains come from? Yeah, I originally got the chains for reading A Christmas Carol. But now we use them every night. Although, we're actually, I don't deserve these. We're $19 away from the next face camera expansion milestone and the entrance of the Jost. So yeah, if you've enjoyed this year of me reading Moby Dick out loud, feel free to throw a few bucks toward the entrance of the Jost. Kindle says, I'm still pushing Three Musketeers. Three Musketeers is not outside of consideration. I originally did not, we had a discussion last time we picked books about Machiavelli's The Prince, because that's a book that, like Dracula and Moby Dick and Utopia, gets referenced a lot, but not a lot of people have taken the time to read. And I think that's definitely a strong contender. So if you guys can think of other things that are kind of in that same mesh of, like, referenced frequently, not incredibly... Folks aren't encouraged to read it on their own constantly. Like I said, Wicked coming out really kills any interest I have in reading Wizard of Oz, because it's like, other people are marketing that book. I don't need to advocate for it. NK Art says, I would love the Count of Monte Cristo if you wanted to go with another Dumas book. Heart of Darkness is suggested by Mad Max Jr. Yeah, that's by Joseph Conrad. That would be in the public domain by now. Heart of Darkness is an interesting one because it does end up being referenced in a lot of media. It does have kind of the shipboard voyage element to it, but that's like a steamer going upriver. There is going to be some racism that we're going to have to address, but once again, we're kind of resigned to the fact that any novel in the public domain at this point was probably written at a time where they had different social norms and considerations of other people as human than we have today. Silmarillion's definitely not in the public domain. Yurgi says, the thing that's immediately comes to mind when you say stuff that gets referenced all the time is the Telltale Heart, but I don't think you want to do Poe. Well, Poe isn't a novelist. He's a short story author. And we've read Poe short stories on random streams throughout the years. So, like, I'm pretty sure I've read the Telltale Heart on stream before. I think, did Badger and I read the Telltale Heart together for one of the Halloween streams? I feel like... Doesn't mean I wouldn't do it again, but... Friendly Little Plant says, I have so many recommendations for French books because that's what I study, but I'm lost in English literature. No worries. Paradise Lost is good and definitely has opportunities for voices. The biggest problem with Jules Verne is picking a translation. Hey, we got a tip rolling in. Let's see who it's from. It's from Kyle. Thank you, Kyle, for tipping 19. That gets us evenly to our next face camera expansion milestone. Here we go. Y'all have seen that money goes straight to my head with each face camera expansion milestone we hit. But now, like Jacob Marley, these chains I forged in life are about to begin pulling me down to the deep below. Enter the Jost. Ba 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 ba. Lowering the Joe opacity now to 90%. La da da da. Thank you so much to Kyle. And just as a reminder, tips are welcome via paypal.me/JoeHills and YouTube Super Chat. Da 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 da. Robin Koro says, as someone who doesn't get into the streams very much, why do you like reading on streams? And, like, how do you focus on Minecraft at the same time? Well, I like the reading streams for a few reasons. One, I enjoy reading out loud. And if you don't enjoy reading out loud, it's hard to explain why somebody else might to you. That's just how some people like some flavors of ice cream, and some people don't like ice cream at all. You know, like, it's hard to explain why to somebody who doesn't get that. The other thing is, I have so much grindy work to do around this area here. Like, all these mountains to remove and roads to lay in and things like that. It's a good way for me to set aside time once a week to work on the grindy stuff. Because I can read. I've been practicing reading while playing Minecraft for years. I read the chats as I play. And reading a novel isn't that much different. But it is a little bit harder. So I want to choose tasks that are super easy, but, like, take a lot of time, like removing a bunch of mountains and terraforming. And so this is also encouraging me to take on bigger terraforming projects and work at a scale that I wouldn't otherwise. So yeah, different parts of this project have different cognitive loads. And so I've always got something grindy in my back pocket for Saturday nights so I can come out here and chill. Kai4M says this is not to do with the acquisition of the U.S. Virgin Islands, but Claude Go by Victor Hugo might be a consideration for one day in the future. It's a short story and it's about a man's interaction with the awful justice system, which Victor Hugo eventually returned to in Les Mis. The main problem is translations, which I don't know about. Yeah. Yeah, so, like, y'all are recommending me, like, stuff that's probably great in the original French, but I am terrible at French pronunciation and worse at French comprehension. Anyone suggested The Count of Monte Cristo? A lot of people, actually. That's a pretty common recommendation. You know, I was really interested to go through Project Gutenberg and look at, like, the top 100 most popular works. Some of them were things I had never heard of, but which are pretty influential on future works. You know, they're authors that, like, Oscar Wilde and Dickens cited as their inspirations, but who are kind of too deep a cut for someone with my very basic English literature training, primarily in high school. You know, I wouldn't have heard of some of these guys. I'm like sitting here trying not to type twitch.tv/Project Gutenberg. Hold on. Project Gutenberg most popular. Top 100. Yeah. Dante's Inferno is another one that gets referenced a lot, but it also has a lot of translation issues. And to read Inferno these days, you really need a good annotated version. And reading all those annotations out loud is weird. Even just reading the footnotes in Moby Dick was a bit of a challenge. Inferno is one that has some passable translations that are in the public domain, although I've seen better ones since. But yeah, the annotations are what kill you. No, we've already decided. I've already talked at length about why not Don Quixote, Introverted Kid. Primarily the hyper-violence. The Iliad, Juniper Willows, we've already talked about as well. My favorite translation is by W.H.D. Rouse and is not in the public domain. And I basically, anytime I've tried reading the public domain translations of the Iliad, I'm just like, there are so much better translations nowadays. I'll probably just wait until W.H.D. Rouse's version is in the public domain in a few decades and read it then. I really hope to be doing this 30 or 40 years from now. So, like, I'm not trying to be defeatist. I'm just like, well, that's something to look forward to. Lovely Bunny says, do you procrastinate? Constantly. I'm procrastinating right now. I was going to say, I want to go get a soda, but I have to wait until 10:30. It's actually 10:50. I haven't been looking at the clock because I thought, boy, I've got so much time between now and when I end the stream. I don't know how I'm going to kill all this time. It's like, I feel like I finished reading the book, and I looked at the clock and was like, oh boy. What are we going to talk about until 10:30? And then I just haven't looked at the clock since because I knew that I do a better performance hanging out and chatting with you guys if I'm not just like sitting here looking at the clock. Don't worry, Joe. It'll be Hermitcraft season 45 when we read the Iliad. Yeah, probably. Okay, so this is going to cut over pretty sharply, but we can fill in some of this at least. Sven says Bartleby the Scrivener is nice. D'Angelo says the Brothers Grimm ? Maybe. I don't know if I want to do fairy tales. That just like it just feels like that's not. You know what? Nola's not here to tell me I can just say no without explaining myself. So I guess I'm going to try and explain myself. I feel like reading fairy tales on stream is something I've seen. Like, there was a moment in streaming, and I think it was like right around when Mixer was getting big, maybe before the Microsoft expansion, where there was like this whole thing where like a whole bunch of people were reading fairy tales on stream, but like they all had like, they were all doing like this cozy core thing where they were like streaming from their cottages and reading from their big book of Brother Grimm's fairy tales or something. Like, it was like a whole performance piece. And I feel like if I was gonna do that, I should try to one-up them rather than just doing a lazier version of that. But, like, I don't have the resources right now to, like, build a set for that, or we don't, like, live somewhere that we can have, like, a cabin room or a cabin on the grounds. We don't have, like, property. We're renting an apartment. You know what I mean? Like, it feels like the sort of thing where it would look so much like I was doing the laziest possible version of it that I don't want to do it. Clam Meditation says with Grimm, that's not very cozy. No, there's this whole thing where like cozy core and horror stuff blend. Like, it's the sort of thing where like I would have to figure out how to put my own spin on it. You know, like, I didn't mind reading A Christmas Carol because it didn't feel like that was something like a lot of other people were doing. And so me doing it at all was more effort than they were putting in. Also, the first time I read A Christmas Carol, I actually didn't just read A Christmas Carol. The first time I read The Christmas Carol for viewers was a Discord exclusive, so I wouldn't get sued for copyright infringement by Andrew Hussey, because I had worked out that you could do a mashup of, what's his name? Problem Thief? Problem Spy? What's the Andrew Hussey thing with whatever it is? It works really well when it changes viewpoints in that. Problem Sleuth. Yeah, Problem Sleuth. When Problem Sleuth changes viewpoints, you jump back to A Christmas Carol. Like, and there are certain points in A Christmas Carol that correspond tightly with things in Problem Sleuth. And so I did this weird mashup of Problem Sleuth and A Christmas Carol. And I was like, well, that was really good. But if I want to do this for the broader audience, I'm just going to have to do The Christmas Carol. If I read White Fang, would I wear a pair of wolf ears as I read? I feel like a lot of viewers might find that disturbing. I like I think taxidermy is cool, but I'm not sure about using it like as a prop. And also, like if it was something that like there's some weird ethical things with like how did this animal die and things like that where like if you don't know like the farmer like who killed the thing, like there's some people that do like what do you call it, like breeding wild animals in captivity for their furs and stuff. It's a whole supply chain nightmare I don't want to get into. um the Epic of Gilgamesh would be an interesting story. Yeah, there is some interesting stuff with old stories, like the Bhagavad Gita is old enough that there's actually some decent translations in English in the public domain. So I wouldn't rule out certain ancient stories. The more ancient the story is, the more likely I am to be okay with one of the public domain translations of it. I think for whatever reason, the public domain translations of the Iliad and the Odyssey just really suck compared to the modern ones. And I don't know why. I don't know why. I think it has something to do with how Greek was maybe taught in English schools at the time or something, where there was like certain expectations baked into it. I don't want to do a Russian novel at this time. MJ says Homer isn't ancient enough. Got it. No, that's the thing is Homer is actually a weird odd man out, because there's a lot of other stories that are that old or older that have great English translations, but I found they're not usually from the Greek. I found English translations of ancient Indian stuff is usually pretty solid. And the weird thing is, there's still usually British English translations from the 1800s, but for some reason or another, the work they were doing on Indian texts versus Greek texts, it's different. It's literally different schools of translation, I guess, but I don't know. Okay. Let's go ahead and do last call for tips. We are currently 20 away from the next face camera expansion milestone. Tips are welcome via paypal.me/JoeHills and YouTube Super Chat. Robin Kuro says, so what are the contender books right now? I don't have the list in front of me. Joju says, isn't a lot of Mark Twain stuff public domain by now? Yeah, it is. I was actually strongly considering his Joan of Arc biography, which is a kind of a weird one, but it's Joan of Arc by Mark Twain is on my list in the same way Gatsby and Frankenstein are on my list, where I'm like, my gut says I'm going to read this one eventually, but it's not the right moment. So, yeah, I feel like we'll eventually come around to a full Mark Twain novel. In the short term, though, I want to do some Mark Twain stories and some Jack London stories as part of the short stories between the novels. Dun, 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 dun. Welcome, Lone Courier. We are wrapping up in a little bit. My throat is actually getting pretty dry. And I got a busy day tomorrow. So I can't stay up too late. I am going to the Gamers Outreach event. I was just telling folks here that we're not going to be starting the next novel. We just finished Moby Dick tonight. Did I forget to set the stream title? I don't think I set the stream title. Yeah, it says after party for episode 59 in Hermitcraft. Well, we're doing it live. Moby Dick finale. Safe. I'm not going to change the Twitch one, but I changed the YouTube one because that'll go in the playlist. Wandering Mass says there's a few on this list that haven't been suggested where I know the title but not the specifics of what in them. War of the Worlds, Jane Eyre, The Scarlet Letter. Yeah, a War of the Worlds is definitely one I've considered. I don't know Jane Eyre very well, and I've read The Scarlet Letter before, but I don't know that I'm the best person to lead conversations about it. I feel like... Yeah. Santanu says, wait, the party's over already? Yeah, sorry. We've only been streaming for 2 hours and a half on a 2-hour stream. Centauratron says, some of Mark Twain's stuff is already covered in schools, though, which you mentioned not wanting to do novels that folks already know anyway. Well, that's the thing is, Mark Twain's Joan of Arc biography is one of the least curriculumized Mark Twain books. Vigilant Watcher says, it's a series of short stories, but would you consider some of the Jungle Book a comfort classic and a great conversation starter? Unfortunately, I don't really know anything about a Jungle Book. I know that they brought back some of the characters for Tailspin. Santanu says, would you do a book you've never read? I would be ill-equipped to lead a discussion on a book I hadn't read. So, any book on this... Any book we're talking about now that I haven't read already, I would have to read front to back before starting the reading on stream. Pepper says, is there going to be an auction for Gamers Outreach? I don't know if an auction has been announced, is what I feel like I can say right now. Okay. Have a good night, friendly little plants. Okay, how are we doing here? Some more of this is filled in. Okay, so... Okay. Jevin left the game. Goodbye, Jevin. Jevin left the game. Dun, dun, dun. Centauratron says, Joe, thanks for the stream. Have a good night. Thank you, Centauratron, as well. Yeah, I feel like it is time to wrap up. We're going to do a hard refresh on PayPal tips, making sure we haven't missed any. Doesn't look like we have. Okay. So, let's go ahead and see what is happening in the broader world of Twitch. It looks like Don't Panic Flip is just about to start playing Dungeons and Dragons. So we're going to go ahead and raid Don't Panic Flip. George is a great streamer. Be kind, be cool when you're over there. Thank you all so much for joining me. We did it. We made it through Moby Dick. I'm kind of exhausted, and I'm going to go collapse now. But yeah, thank you all so much for joining me for this. We'll be back next Saturday with some short stories by Jack London and Mark Twain. Data's two favorite people he met in San Francisco in Star Trek The Next Generation. Until next time, y'all, this is Joe Hills from Nashville, Tennessee. Keep adventuring. Stop streaming.